Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth.
But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy and utterly to make away many. He shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him.
From Scripture, we learn of the miracle of restoration. You who have made me see many troubles and calamities will revive me again. From the depths of the earth, you will bring me up again. You will increase my greatness and comfort me again.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast.
Through this exercise, ROK US Marines and Navy forces become one team to suppress the war. We're strengthening the ability to carry out an ROK US mission.
Not designed to invade any particular place. This is the planning for this exercise took place over a year ago. This is something that we routinely do with the Republic of Korea. I landed at this very beach 27 or 28 years ago with ROK Marines practicing on the old Team Spirit exercise. So this is what we do. This is the most complex form of military maneuver that any nation can undertake. This year was a unique opportunity because we had amphibious forces returning from the Persian Gulf, and as they were returning to the west coast of the United States, they stopped to allow us to practice at a larger scale than we previously had been able to do in the last few years.
We're also following a dramatic escalation of tensions on the Korean peninsula this morning. The North and South traded artillery fire for hours. South Korean officials say the North fired shells across a disputed sea boundary. Troops from the South returned fire into North Korean waters. Seth Doan is in Beijing, where China is asking both sides to calm down. Seth, good morning.
Good morning to you. Yes, North Korea fired about 500 of those artillery shells towards South Korea. About 100 of those crossed the border into South Korea. South Korea then responded by firing 300 artillery shells toward the north. It's not clear how many of those shells landed on the other side of that maritime border. All of the shelling is taking place in the waters off the western coast of the Korean peninsula in the Yellow Sea. The issue is that the shells are landing quite close to some inhabited islands there, forcing some South Koreans to flee to emergency evacuation shelters. This is all taking place against the backdrop of regularly scheduled joint military exercises taking place between South Korean and U.S. troops. I spoke with a CBS News producer in Seoul today who told me that this is really making headlines there and causing some concern, not only because of the sheer number of shells that we're talking about here, but also because it's reminiscent of an incident back in 2010 that was quite similar, where you had North Korean shelling that killed 4 South Koreans. That was the first time South Koreans had been killed in that way since 1953, the de facto end of the Korean War. Of course, the real concern here is that this is not only going to inflame emotions, but any casualties could really prompt some sort of more significant military response. Charlie?
Seth, thanks. Good morning, everybody. Tensions rising on the Korean Peninsula The North and South exchanging fire for more than 3 hours earlier today. No one saw this coming. It's breaking news now, and I'm Bill Hemmer. Welcome here to a brand new week of America's Newsroom.
Hello there.
Great
Happy
weekend.
Monday, Bill.
Yeah,
good morning, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum. Here is the news. South Korea is now accusing the North of intentionally trying to provoke a confrontation after hundreds of rockets were fired across a disputed border there. Jonathan Hunt is live in our newsroom with the details on this. Good morning to you, Jonathan. What do we have here?
Well, Martha, what happened here is the North Koreans fired first. Some 500 artillery shells were fired. And if you take a look at a map of the Korean Peninsula, you can see the demilitarized zone, the border. And then out to the left there is a disputed water border. At least 100 of those North Korean shells landed across that water border in South Korean waters. So the South Koreans then returned fire, firing something like 300 artillery shells of their own. It is worth pointing out, though, that on neither side were those shells fired at land or at any military targets. Nonetheless, we've just got a statement from the White House, Martha. They have called North Korea's actions dangerous and provocative, Martha.
Yeah. All right. So this isn't the first time that we've seen this kind of incident happening there.
No, it's certainly not. You only need to go back to 2010. In March of that year, a South Korean warship was sunk in those waters with the loss of 46 sailors. And then what you're looking at here, November 2010, an artillery bombardment again along that same disputed water border. And then some of the shells did land on an inhabited island. 4 South Koreans were killed then. Now, cooler heads prevailed at that time. Obviously, the hope is that the same will happen now. But you have a young, untested leader in North Korea now, Kim Jong-un. You also have a new president in South Korea, only took office last year. So when you've got two inexperienced leaders, these kind of exchanges of fire, the fear, obviously, Martha, is that one of them will make a mistake, take it that little bit too far, and then all bets are off.
Yeah, that's a very obvious concern. Great point. So the growing tensions that we have seen, thank you, Jonathan, have added a new urgency to U.S. military exercises with the South. Nearly 10,000 U.S. Marines and naval personnel hitting the beach in a mock invasion. Look at these pictures. Along with 1,200 South Korean forces, the two allies acting as one team in a massive display of firepower. The drills are supposed to run until next Monday and are reportedly the biggest by the U.S. and South Korea in over 20 years.
Artillery fire between North and South Korea this morning. It came after North Korea suddenly announced it would conduct live fire drills in the area. South Korea responded by firing 300 artillery shells into North Korean waters. The exchange of artillery fire forced South Koreans living in the area to run for cover. This comes on the heels of North Korea hinting at more nuclear testing. CNN Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr is here to tell us more. Good morning.
Good morning, Carol. I think the pictures we're actually looking at are pretty coincidental but timely. About 13,000 U.S., South Korean, and allied troops in South Korea conducting exercises as this latest violence broke out. A lot of worry that North Korea is entering another provocation cycle. They announced these live fire exercises. Their artillery shells fell in the waters off South Korea's western coast, an area that has seen a lot of dispute in the past. Even as these exercises, you see the American V-22s and amphibious vehicles right there, even as these Western exercises were taking place. So the question now really is, how far is North Korea going to go with all of this? Will there be more provocations? And what will happen next? And as you said, Carol, this comes one day after North Korea suggested it might conduct another nuclear test.
Now, this Fox News alert from the Korean Peninsula, one of the most dangerous hotspots on Earth right now. The North and the South exchanging fire. Hundreds of artillery shells and rockets being shot across their disputed border. The rising tensions forcing South Koreans living along the front lines to evacuate their homes and look for cover in secure shelters. Jonathan Hunt joins us now with more on what's going on there. Jonathan.
Yeah, dangerous situation, John. The North Koreans fired first in this particular incident. Some 500 artillery shells fired by North Korean forces. You see the demilitarized zone that separates the two Koreas across the peninsula there. That zone goes out into the Yellow Sea off the west coast of the Korean peninsula there. And 100 of those artillery shells crossed that line and fell in South Korean waters. So the South Koreans then hit back, firing 300 of their own shells. What you're looking at here is what may be one of the reasons why the North Koreans acted. These are exercises between the US and South Korean military forces. The North Koreans don't like the fact that they're going on, and a lot of analysts say that's why they launched these artillery shells as a sort of warning shot, if you like. And it's not as if they haven't done it before. Go back to November 2010. North Koreans fired a bunch of shells again. Then they landed on some of the islands in those waters in the Yellow Sea and actually killed 4 South Koreans in that instance. Now, cooler heads prevailed at that time. Everyone hopes that cooler heads will prevail again this time, but there are differences now. Kim Jong-un is the new untested leader of North Korea. He's very unpredictable. He's involved, many believe, in a power struggle at home, so nobody can say what he might do next. There is already some reports coming out that the North Koreans may be planning another nuclear test. The Russians have said that is a very worrying development. Meantime, the White House has put out a statement on today's incident of the artillery firing, saying that it is, quote, dangerous and provocative. And anything in that region of the world, John, certainly is dangerous and provocative.
Very unstable. Doesn't take much to set off the North.
Absolutely.
Jonathan Hunt, thank you.
Sure.
Watch ye therefore, and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man.